everyone, and thanks for joining us today at our nsquared Sydney office. Today we're going to talk about why less is more when it comes to NUI development and surface development and software development overall. So Dr. Neil, can you explain to us exactly why less is more?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. That helps a little bit, knowing that you have that knowledge. Now, can you please expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Look, so, we did a bit of fun yesterday and, pushed out this video. And the reality is that we always complicate things. Yeah, especially in technology, we have this huge tendency to overcomplicate what we build. And especially as developers, we do this a lot because we want features. It's one of the things when you look at software is about functionality. Software is about creating features that, enhance that functionality. And, the tendency that we have is that when we see that something doesn't work quite as we want it to work, we add a feature to make it work that way. And that adds to complexity. And so we have this tendency to increase the level of complexity of software constantly. And really that doesn't help our users. And there's lots of statistics showing that huge percentages of the software that's created out there, a huge percentage of those feature lists just never get touched. And a lot of features are written because the competition has the features, not because the users want them. Mm-hmm. And so that when you put it in the PC magazine or whatever, your application next to company X's application, they can tick all the boxes and says, yes, this has this special feature that no one's ever going to use. Tick. It doesn't really help anyone. And so I think it's important, especially as we move forward, to reduce complexity for our users. And one of the simplest ways of doing that is to say, if you're building a feature that 80% of your users won't use, don't build it. Why are you wasting your time? That's a huge investment to create this extra level of complexity that's not required in the software. And this goes right back through to some of the things I used to talk about with agile development and extreme programming is you should always just do what it takes to get something working. And once it's working and it meets the needs of 80% of your users, you're ready to ship it pretty much. You've got that completion point. So don't overcomplicate things. And I think when it applies to the user interface, it gets even worse. Hundreds of menus, nested menus, trying to find what you want. It should just be so simple that it's obvious. We talk in surface development about walk up and use. There should be no manual. There should be no need for a manual. And if you think about one of the principles we talked about last time, scaffolding, where you take what the users already know and you build upon it in small stages. So those users are gaining knowledge of how to use your application a step at a time, rather than being exposed to the full complexity of your application straight away. And so those little things will add value. And I'll guarantee every single developer underestimates the power of simplicity and the power of putting less features into an application. When you finish an application or you're getting close to finish, you shouldn't go, oh, what extra feature should we add? What you should be asking is, hey, what can we take away from this? You look at an application, you should go, what can we remove from this to make it simpler and easier to use? How can we really reduce the complexity level, make it simpler, make it easier, so that the user picks it up and just runs with it straight away? And actually, I brought a book that is a great book, The Paradox of Choice, and this spins it on its head and explains why more is less. But actually, it's the same concept that the more choices you give users, the more features and ability for people to make choices, the more complicated their lives become, and the harder it is for them to actually achieve the goal. And so really you want to lead your user using something like a concept like scaffolding through these very simple paths to get where they want to get to. And that makes the whole journey of that achievement more enjoyable too.
So basically I hear you saying that users might even think that they want more features, but in reality when it comes down to using the product, when there's less features, they're more apt to reach the goal that they're trying to achieve with that program.
Yeah, and that's actually a whole other conversation. What do users want?
Right.
Because, Henry Ford, and we can talk about this more another time, but Henry Ford said, if he had asked his customers what they had wanted before he started, he would have been, building a faster horse. And that's not, where we want to be. We want to be innovating into a new direction, and often customers don't understand what the technology is capable of, or what, the innovations out there could be doing for them. If you had asked customers, 40 years ago, what they wanted out of a phone, I bet very few of them would have come up with the kind of mobile phones we have today, right? So the feature set is, that's part of the innovation and part of where we're going. And so, asking customers what they want isn't always the best idea. You've got to do some kind of understanding of the market and understand, where it's going and what the features that they're looking for are. But often it's not a case of just giving them everything they want. And we see this a lot in certain applications and certain technology where they have really gone and asked the customers, as many as they can for all the features they want, and then they try and put them all into a device, all into a piece of software, and it becomes very hard to use that software because it has it's too much, it's too overwhelming for most people.
And there's something beautiful about simplicity that
Right.
attracts people.
Yeah, and I think, we overestimate the value of complexity. And we struggle with a whole other problem as developers, which is, if you take something that looks really simple to your boss and say, this is what I've achieved after 2 months of work, your boss is going to go, what, is that it? Whereas if you take something that's really complicated, looks as though, it must have taken years to build, and you say, this is what I achieved after the last 2 months, your boss thinks, oh wow, he's really smart.
Right.
But that's probably because the boss is stupid, right? Because the reality is the real genius is in simplicity. It's that slap on the forehead when you look at a solution to something that you found really complicated and you see that actually it's just, a very simple equation. That's the way the real genius lies, is creating simplicity out of complexity.
And it's very difficult to do that.
Very difficult to do. Yeah, it requires repeated iterations of removal, essentially. That's what you do, is you build something and then you iterate, removing stuff from it until it just does the right thing the right way.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that seems to be a trick in many facets of life. I mean, as a technical writer, I know less is more, simplicity is more, and it's easier to write a bunch about a topic than it
Right.
is to cut back on those words and make it more concise. And it's the same way in software development, it sounds
Right.
like.
Yeah, and also, that goes all the way from the macro of how it exposes itself to the user down to, the detail level of how your code is. The less code you have, the less code to go wrong, the less code to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
So again, less is more, always.
Right. Well, anything else you have to say about the less is more concept?
No.
Nope. I guess that'll wrap it up for today then. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks.